I was actually at Butterfield. It was last summer, 2021, um, and I was there with Priyadaka, and I saw a talk labeled "Insulate Britain." Being a carpenter, I thought I was going to go learn how to better insulate houses. I didn't expect it would lead me to gluing myself to the M25. Um, but what I heard was quite worrying. I was aware of the environmental crisis, and I wasn't aware of how short the window was to mitigate the worst of it, basically. Um, so I attended that talk. Chittapala was there, and a few other individuals that weren't part of Triratna, but it felt right, and it felt that something needed to be done, and I needed to step up. And then I joined Insulate Britain, and then I've since moved into the Just Stop Oil campaign, and I still work with Insulate Britain even though we're off the roads. I'm trying to look at getting a company going that's insulating houses itself, looking to potentially work with a probation service to help people upskill. And the irony being that if activists are given community service by this government, that they could then do that by insulating houses as part of their punishment. And yeah, I'm also looking to lobby the government. So I'm still broadly involved with the objective of insulating Britain. I have been involved with Just Stop Oil in some of the more intense end of it, more recently. Um, but yeah, I have many plates spinning. I feel like that's just what's needed right now. And just to add, I feel extremely resourced in doing it. I don't think people are aware of the amount of community resilience that there is in us. I mean, if you look at the schedule of things that are offered on every day, it starts with an online meditation offered, ends with yoga at the end of the day, and in between are legal cafes, understanding your rights, team building, trust and courage sessions, the work that reconnects stuff by Joanna Macy. I mean, there's no way we could do what we're doing if we didn't have the community offering the resilience that it does. It's happening every day, through online, in between actions, and in-person stuff where possible. I learned about Extinction Rebellion in 2019, and I helped in like a well-being capacity. So I remember delivering adult nappies to people on the roads throughout London. I thought, how weird. I didn't want to be one of those people in an adult nappy, but I appreciated them and wanted to take them that and bring them some water and I remember holding shade over them. But I was too scared to get arrested. I didn't want to. I was still looking to immigrate to Canada, which I've accepted is perhaps not a possibility for me anymore now that I have a criminal record. And potentially adopting children was something I also wanted to do. I have checked out with social services what my record or records I could have would look like to social services, and I've been told that actually environmentally minded parents that have stuck their neck on the line would be something actually quite sought after, with some agencies that understand it. So I therefore, once just understanding that, decided to move into a role that was going to lead to arrest.
Cameron described it. We just happened to be together at the same time when someone mentioned Insulate Britain, and I had no idea what that meant whatsoever. But it was someone who was already going a bit further, and they said, "Why don't you just go along and listen?" So Cameron and I went along and listened to a talk, two or three people speaking, and they just made it very, very clear what a crisis we're in. We've got 2 or 3 years to really make a difference to keeping our temperatures at a survivable level, and the fact that the government had basically agreed to insulate every home in Britain, and there'd been a policy set up to do that, but they weren't enacting it. It was a badly put together policy. So what we were going to do was to get the government to actually do what they say they were going to do. It was not a controversial policy. Insulating Britain is an obvious thing to do. The government has accepted. Businesses were behind it. It was clearly going to make a difference to people who are struggling with fuel poverty, and it's going to make a difference to emissions. So we said, well, we'll ask the government to actually do what they said they were going to do, and if not, we will go into action. So I thought I just have to do it. I just have to. It makes sense. It's so clear. We can't mess about anymore. We can't delay and faff around. So I agreed to do it, and I was scared. That was July, I think, and I was scared from July till September, thinking that I was actually going to do it. And I wasn't looking forward to it, but I just felt, this is big. This is significant. It's something I have to do. It looks like there's going to be a reasonable number of other people involved. So yeah, in September I went out and we set on the road. I had a week going out, sitting on the M25 junctions and facing a certain amount of hostility, understandable hostility from drivers. Mostly a more tolerant response from the police, and occasional people off the streets just supporting us, understanding it, and no one argued against the campaign. No one argued against it in Britain. Everyone said they quite understand what we're doing to get that, but they just didn't agree with these tactics. And the catch was, we've said it over and over again. What else is going to make a difference? What else do you do? Everything else has been tried. The government has agreed to do it. They're telling people they're doing it, but they're not doing it. Letter writing, marching has just come to an end. So civil disobedience is as it were the next step, or the final step. So yeah, so I had a week of doing that. There's nothing complicated about insulation. There's nothing controversial about it. Lots of people need it done. It's not expensive. It's not complicated. We just weren't doing it. So yeah, the controversial action was needed.
We meditated a lot. It did ground us. We would do it at the house where we were living in community together in the week that we were doing the Insulate Britain actions, and we would do it just before stepping out onto the road. We would often find a green space between the train station that we'd perhaps arrived at and the M25, and we would bring to mind meta for the planet, and for all the non-human beings that don't have a chance to protest, basically, and all the people in the global south who are voiceless and most affected. And because we knew how painful it was to disrupt people, and we would bring to mind the people that we were standing up for. And I know it sort of looks counterintuitive to see us stopping ordinary people going about their daily lives. But they've been lied to about how bad things are. And we're effectively trying to warn people. We're trying to grab headlines. We're trying to talk about the severity of things, because the media landscape has failed us beyond belief. I mean, people might know me from the You Can't Grow Concrete interview that went viral, where this guy is attacking me for being a carpenter, and just coming up with ludicrous statements to try and get one in on me, when this person is a place should be talking about this to people. So we did feel that I can talk maybe about the tactics later a bit more and come back to it as a practice. But for me, I feel this sense of Sangha in it. The last 6 weeks have been quite intense with Just Stop Oil, and people were arrested, that we weren't expecting, drivers that were arrested and have been put in prison with no trial. It's a massive overreach by the state, and it's quite unsettling. But to see the level of support that comes into action at that moment, setting up the prisoner accounts so we can put money on their card as quickly as we can so they can make the phone calls. In 24 hours, we've raised over £500 to help him pay to get his car out of the impound when he's left. I mean, it is incredible. And just speaking to his mum earlier and telling him, oh yeah, we'll be there to pick him up out the prison if he's let out tomorrow, and we'll do that. She's just like, what? What? I don't hear about these sorts of communities.
I mean, I think one has to have a real sense of clarity within oneself about acting ethically and acting skillfully, uh, based on a lot of practice and connecting with other people, and having a sense of ethical integrity that however you live in the world, it has an effect. So if you, as it were, if you don't do very much, you're having an effect on the world. If you are keeping it quiet, staying at home, not being confrontational, sort of keeping a low profile, that has an effect on the world, which could be positive or negative. And same thing, stepping out in the world, being seen, can potentially have positive or negative effects. But the spotlight is on you because you're seen, so it's much more likely you're going to get criticised. So one has to have a real sense of confidence in practice, that this is valuable. Before I started practicing Buddhism in the 80s and 90s, I was involved in a lot of illegal animal liberation actions, which were some low-level violence, getting animals out, liberating animals, very challenging, very difficult. And I couldn't carry on with that. Practicing as a Buddhist gave a healthier context to how one makes a difference to suffering in the world. Having seen suffering of animals, trying to have a big ethical context to that, where one really is going deep and having a sense of compassion is significant. As far as I'm concerned, if action is very well thought out and it's non-violent action, then it's skillful. It's uncomfortable. I was scared. I didn't really enjoy it. It is confrontational and it does seem difficult, but it's having a bigger sense that one is engaged in something that's more addressing suffering. So people being stopped on the motorway, I can quite understand why they're unhappy, and they quite understandably express themselves unhappily. But I felt I was living out something bigger than that, something deeper than that, which was deeper suffering in the world, whereby people who don't get seen, don't have a voice, need that. So yeah, complex mixture of emotions inside, but a sense of ethical integrity with it. You could say attention, because you have to sort of meet those people as they are right away. So they're saying, get out of the way. And you're saying, look, I really understand why this is difficult for you. I really understand you want to keep going. And, be understanding of what they're doing and be apologetic right for that moment. Sometimes you can say to people, we're doing this for a bigger reason, and we're doing this to deal with fuel poverty for tens of thousands of people in this country or more. But it depends on whether they're going to listen or not. So the tension is just having to sit there when you're not understood, or people are just fed up right now. In a way, there's not such a tension within practice, because I feel within myself there is an integrity. But how you communicate that? Do people ask us questions? Do people talk to us about what's going on? Because the media image of us is that we're, I won't go into all the cliches about what we're like, but that's because people don't know us. They don't understand what I'm like and what Cameron's like, what people have gone through, and why people are doing it. So there's a tension when people don't know. If people talk to me, and I've had a few decent conversations where people say what's going on, and they have some understanding, and then the tension sort of lifts to some degree. People don't always want to listen or ask questions, so then there's an awkwardness. Yeah, it involves really skillful communication, making sure I understand where they are and what they don't, what they've come from, what they don't understand, what they don't like, and then saying, well, that's fair enough, and there's this bigger issue. There is this climate catastrophe.
Protest is a citizen's duty. I feel it is our responsibility to keep the people who are governing, and whether we like politics or not, politics is there. We have governance, and that governance creates rules and legislation, and voting is not enough. I think we've been misled to think that that is, and even our voter turnout is so poor these days that our engagement with democracy, keeping a healthy, active democracy, is very low. And I think that's perhaps why we've got into this situation that we have, where the science of what the fossil fuel industry is doing to our planet has been on the wall for 40 years. Longer, really, in some cases, it was known about. And we're seeing ExxonMobil, and Shell being proven that they knew and they covered it up, and they hired their own scientists to confuse. And that's still going on today, this sense of confusing us about the crisis, just delay, delay, delay. So I think whether it's political or not, I don't know, but it's to be active. We have to be active citizens, global citizens, considerate citizens of one another, and hold people to account who can have impact. Because if we had been doing this 40 years ago, we would not be in the 6th mass extinction right now, which is what is happening all around us. And I think as Buddhists, we're perhaps more acutely aware, because we are more in touch with our surroundings, or really trying to feel the pain of it. We're aware of the species loss right now, and we're aware of the difficulty that nature is having, and we have that aesthetic appreciation for nature hugely, and so we're perhaps even more aware of the effects that it's having on nature right now. So I hate to get drawn down to, is this political or isn't it political, because it's human what it is, and we must address this tsunami of suffering that is here already. It's on our shores, and it's going to just absolutely wipe out vast swathes of people. And for me, I was drawn into Buddhism because I felt it could alleviate mine and others' suffering, and that is why I'm still a Buddhist, and that's my core for me, why I do what I do and how I do it.
The most straightforward thing is talk to us, make a personal connection, because then you can have a real conversation. You can ask about what it's been like, and find out what your potential is. There are quite a lot of Buddhists within Triratna and elsewhere who do know something and who have some interest, some connection. There's XR Buddhists groups, Buddhists involved in Extinction Rebellion, and it's just a matter of following through to find a lead. Because I think when you know someone personally, it changes it completely, because then you can really see yourself much more closely, potentially getting involved. And there's plenty of non-direct action sorts of skills that are needed, and people can offer that and make a connection with a broader number of people.
I was thinking about my interactions with Christian Climate Action, and for me, they're large in numbers. They really are. And for me, I've seen their faith in action, and I can sort of understand what it's like to bring your faith into non-violent direct action by seeing them. So as well as talking to Buddhists, I would also encourage people to reach out to the Christian Climate Action Group, and I know that they have offered, when I've said, look, we might have some Buddhists who have not done action before, but we don't have capacity to take them out in their own group, and they say, yeah, we'll put them under our wing and we'll take them out. So I think this interfaith thing would be fantastic to see more of. I don't think basically for every one person that is able to, and I recognize not everybody is able to put themselves through the arrest process, it isn't pleasant. The court stuff is stressful as well, and if you do end up in prison, that has knock-on effects too. And I would say I am traumatized by the actions I've done. The last 3 nights, every night I've dreamt about getting my house raided, because of my actions. That is not for everyone. I wish I wasn't doing it either, but I am, and for whatever reason. But behind every one person like that, there's another 10 people supporting them in different ways. And that can be from going to court. You know, we've got a court tomorrow where we're going to hear about a bail hearing. And we've got no one who's going to the court. So we don't know how we're going to hear if the people who are in prison have been granted bail until they hear it. And then they call someone and they call us. If we could just have someone go to that court hearing and tell us the result. You know, there's that. We call them queen mums. They're people that cook and care for people in action. They look after the nest. And I think Buddhists would be so suited to that. They can bring that sort of, teach people meditation, talk about the Dharma, bring that into that space. I did that a couple of weeks ago when I was in a safe house for a week, and people really appreciated me offering that to them. It really brought, I even took my singing bowl, and that was how I'd wake them. You know, I just treated it like a retreat. You know, so I go around in the morning at 5 a.m. Unfortunately, not to meditate because I got to go up gantry, but you know, they're sort of bringing this kind of vibe to it. So there's just loads of different ways. Again, talk to someone, go to a Just Stop Oil meeting. There's talks happening online. There's talks happening in person. Just go on the website and the events page. Understand a bit more about the theory of why we do what we're doing, why we believe from a social science lens it's necessary, and then find your role, find what skills and talents and location and you have, because I think Buddhists are so attentive to people's needs. There's so many roles that they could help with.
Yes, it's making a difference because individually, or at an everyday level, people are getting more involved. People are beginning to understand more. People are talking to each other, and that's really hopeful, you know, because that's where real change will come about when ordinary people, whatever jobs they have, whatever their family situation is, they can make a difference in that, and that they can be inspiring and bring something about. COP is obviously pretty disappointing, and I don't have much hope at that sort of level for change. There's so much fossil fuel pressure that the companies just put so much pressure on them. Governments and politicians just seem to move slowly, or whatever's going on. But to see individual people, lots of individual people standing up and making a difference, I'm hopeful in that sense.
I would say that social change is happening all the time. And, you know, it would not be socially acceptable if you saw your neighbor bring a slave round to their house and have them starting a plantation in the back garden. But at one point in time, that was totally acceptable. And things change, and things have often changed when civilians take action. And so I would say that things are going to change. And at some point, it's going to be completely socially unacceptable to burn fossil fuels. That we are going to get to that point. How quickly we get to that point, and whether we get to that point in enough time to curtail the climate crisis, I don't know. But I do have hope, because I'm working towards bringing that time into the present.